Hey friends, today we are reading about the animals of the saltwater habitat. Our learning targets are to distinguish between freshwater and saltwater, identify characteristics of the saltwater habitat, demonstrate an understanding of the word shallow, and then write and draw about characteristics of the saltwater habitat. Our key vocabulary are plankton, regeneration, shallow, slopes, and valleys. Plankton is a noun, and plankton are very small animals or plants that drift in salt water or fresh water. The blue whale eats a type of animal plankton called krill. Regeneration is a noun, and it is the process of regrowing a missing body part. If one of the starfish's arms is cut off, regeneration allows the starfish to grow a new arm. Shallow is an adjective, and it means not deep. He swam in the shallow end of the pool because he was just learning how to swim. Slopes is a verb, and slopes means slants upward or downward, not flat. A hill that slopes downward is good for sledding. Okay, that's a slope. Valleys is a noun. Valleys are areas of low land between two areas of high land. So high land over here, and then there's your valley, the low land in between. There are many valleys between peaks in the mountain range. All right, what do we remember about the freshwater habitat? What was it like? There were lots of plants and animals there, right? We had water lilies, cattails. What do we have for animals? Fish, frogs, turtles, snakes, insects, porcupine, beavers, all sorts of things, right? And the dragonfly adapted, right? It lays its eggs on the water, okay? And it eats the bugs that are around the water. Today, we are going to learn about another water habitat, a saltwater habitat. You've already learned about one saltwater habitat when you studied the Arctic Ocean habitat. For many years, only 4 oceans were recognized: the Arctic, the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Indian, all saltwater habitats. Some time ago, the Southern Ocean, which lies along the coastline of Antarctica, was designated as the 5th ocean. Which ocean? I don't have my map on here. We'll have to go over that at the end. All right, key vocabulary. We've got plankton, regeneration, shallow, slopes, and valleys. Listen carefully to find out more about oceans and saltwater habitats. Welcome to the last habitat we are going to explore. In the last read aloud, we explored freshwater habitats. Now we're going to learn about another kind of water habitat, a saltwater habitat. Saltwater habitats, as you could guess from their name, contain lots of salt. This means that we can't use salt water for drinking. Would you like to drink a cup of salty water? No thanks. What did we learn about salt in the history of the earth? What did we learn about salt? It's a mineral, and it's found in the earth and can be used with food or to help melt snow and ice in the winter to make roads safe. It's hard to imagine, but more of the earth is covered in water than is covered in land. Most of the water is salt water in oceans and seas. Oceans are huge areas of salt water that stretch all around our planet, and they are home to almost half of the world's species of animals and millions of different plants. The water in the ocean comes from the rain as well as from rivers and streams that flow into the ocean. Seas are smaller areas of salt water that have land around them or around part of them. I've come to the largest ocean, the Pacific to show you a bit more about ocean habitats and the plants and animals that live in them. I'm standing on a beach looking out at the water. You can see the waves are crashing onto the beach. This beach and any land that runs alongside the ocean is called the coastline or shoreline. Now, you may think that when you are standing on the land looking at the water, that the land stops where the water starts. It certainly looks that way, but let me get my trusty scuba gear out and walk into the water. Now that I'm here, I'm standing on land. It's just that the land is underwater. The land slopes downward the farther I go out into the water, which means the water is getting deeper and deeper. The interesting thing about the ocean floor, which is the land under the ocean water, is that it isn't flat. As on land, the earth beneath the ocean water has both mountains and valleys. This makes some of the areas in the water in the ocean deeper than others. The Pacific Ocean is full of both plant and animal life, but not all of them share the same space. The conditions under the water are very different in various places. Some parts are deep and some are shallow. Shallow is the antonym or opposite of deep. In other words, not deep. There are cool parts and there are warm parts, there are dark parts, and there are some that are full of light. There are plants and animals in nearly every part of the ocean, some in the deep open waters far from the land, and some in the shallow waters closer to the shore. Some animals like turtles, jellyfish, and crabs live closer to the shore where it's shallower and warmer. Some animals like it better near the surface of the water, and others prefer to live down at the very bottom of the ocean on the deep ocean floor. They have all had to adapt to the conditions of their habitats. For instance, the animals that live in the deeper parts of the ocean have had to adapt to total darkness because the sun's light just can't reach that deep. Some fish, like the devilfish, have very large mouths and sharp teeth so that they can catch their prey as early as possible. Other sea creatures have feelers on their bodies that help them feel where their food is. And some animals make their own light with special chemicals in their bodies, like when you carry a flashlight in the dark. I have now arrived at a special part of the saltwater habitat called a coral reef, which is made up of tiny animals called corals. Corals stay in one place all their adult lives. They have stomachs and mouths and even skeletons. These skeletons can be on the inside or the outside of the coral animals and are also called coral. When the coral animal dies, its skeleton remains in place and other coral animals will come and live on top of the old skeletons. The colony in which the coral lives is called a coral reef. So a coral reef has both coral animals and the skeletons of those animals. I'm here in the Pacific Ocean at a coral reef, and in addition to the coral, there are many other kinds of animals around a reef. I found everything from fish to shellfish to octopi and sharks to snails and turtles. Octopi is the plural of octopus. One octopus, but many octopi. Here is an animal that lies in and around this coral reef and whose name most of you can probably guess based on its shape. It's a starfish. This starfish is known as a sea star. It has 5 arms which make it look like a star. Although it is called a starfish, it's not actually a fish. It belongs to a group of animals that have spiny skin all over their bodies. If I touch the starfish, I can feel that its body is covered with tiny, hard bumps that help protect it from predators such as sharks, manta rays, and other fish. What's a predator again? An animal that eats other animals. Starfish are also able to protect themselves in another amazing way. If another animal actually catches it and bites off one of the starfish's arms, the starfish will not die, and it can still escape. In time, a new arm will grow back and replace the missing arm. When an animal regrows a missing body part, it is called regeneration. The starfish doesn't swim. It crawls very slowly along the ocean floor using hundreds of tiny tube feet. These feet attach to whatever the starfish is crawling over. As it crawls along the floor, the starfish is always on the lookout for food. This starfish's prey includes fish, snails, clams, oysters, and crabs. Here's another animal that lives in salt water. This shellfish is called a lobster. Lobsters live on the ocean floor in openings between rocks. Their hard shell stops most other animals from trying to eat them. Lobsters have many legs that they use for crawling about, and they use antennae on their head to feel their way along the murky ocean floor. I have to watch out for the lobster's claws. They are called pinchers, and they are very strong. The lobster uses them to defend itself against its prey and catch and crush its own food. Lobsters are carnivores. They eat fish, worms, and other shellfish. I'm going to move out of the way of this lobster before I get squeezed. Looks like I'm moving right into the path of another predator. This is a hammerhead shark. If you take a look, you can see how the hammerhead got its name. Its head is very thick, and it looks like a hammer from above, with an eye and a nostril on each end. The hammerhead shark is a large fish, growing up to 20 feet long and weighing over 500 pounds. That's about the same weight as 10 first graders. Hammerheads like to live in warm waters, so they are mostly found near the coast where the waters are shallow and warmer. Sharks are carnivores. The hammerhead's favorite food is a fish called a ray, but it also likes to eat octopus, lobster, crab, and fish, including other sharks. Most sharks have smooth and slender bodies, which help them swim fast. Their mouths are full of sharp teeth to help them catch their prey. Let's go back up to the surface. There's a sea animal I'm sure you'll want to see, but we have to travel far out to the sea away from the coral reef into deeper water in order to see it. This amazing creature is the biggest animal in the world. It's a blue whale. Blue whales have blue-gray skin and are covered in a layer of blubber that helps to keep them warm in the frigid ocean depths. What's blubber? A layer of fat that some animals have under their skin that keeps them warm. Blue whales are so big that they can weigh as much as 25 elephants. In fact, blue whales are the biggest animals known to have lived on Earth, even bigger than dinosaurs. The blue whale spends all of its time living in the deep water, but unlike fish, it can't breathe underwater because it does not have gills. It needs to breathe air just like we do. The blue whale can hold its breath and stay underwater for as long as 30 minutes before eventually coming up for air. It breathes using blowholes on top of its head. Sometimes, when it does come up for air, it breathes out a huge fountain of water from the blowholes. Blue whales are carnivores. They eat lots of food to build up their blubber during the summer months when the food is easy to find. Blue whales can eat teeny tiny sea creatures like plankton. The plankton that blue whales eat are small shrimp-like shellfish that are about the size of your little finger. It's incredible to think that the biggest animal on Earth eats one of the smallest animals on Earth. The ocean is so huge and deep that we could spend all year looking at the plants and animals that live there and still not see them all. In fact, there are still many living things in the ocean that people and adventurous rats have not even discovered yet. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the animals in this saltwater habitat in the Pacific Ocean. We still have one more stop to make on our worldwide tour of habitats. I'll see you next time. All right, if you need a break, go ahead and take one really quick and then come right back. All right, so how is a saltwater habitat different from a freshwater habitat? A saltwater habitat has salt in it, right? The water in the saltwater habitat has salt, which is not for drinking, right? We don't drink salt water. And we also learned that saltwater habitats are much bigger, right? They're huge and they take up most of the earth. But we know that the freshwater habitats, they don't have much salt in them, and they are in much smaller bodies of water like ponds, lakes, and rivers. How would you describe the ocean floor? Is it flat and level, or does it go up and down? It goes up and down, or slopes, just like the land outside of the ocean. It has mountains and valleys. What kind of animals live in the saltwater habitat? Starfish, sharks, lobster, okay? What other things? Turtles, whales, a whole bunch of them. Do the animals that you learned about in the Arctic Ocean, like walruses and polar bears, also live in the Pacific Ocean? No, why not? Because the climate and the other conditions are different there, right? It's a lot colder in the Arctic, so they would not be living in the Pacific Ocean. What are some of the ways that animals have adapted to the Pacific Ocean saltwater habitat? Think about your sharks. They've got really big mouths so that they can catch fish while they swim. And how about the animals that live at the very bottom of the ocean where there's no light? They've got those feelers, right? Or they make their own light with special chemicals in their body. What animal is that on the screen? What do you see? A starfish. And a starfish eats snails, clams, oysters, and crabs. So does that make it an omnivore, a carnivore, or an herbivore? A carnivore, because carnivores eat only meat. And we talked about how the starfish can regenerate, or it does this thing called regeneration. What does regeneration mean? It means that it can grow back parts of its body, right? So now let's talk about our word work. In the read aloud today, you heard the conditions under the water are very different in various places. Some parts are deep and some are shallow. There are cool parts and there are warm parts. Some are dark and some are full of light. I want you to say the word shallow. Shallow. Can you clap out the syllables? Shallow. Can you whisper it? Shallow. Can you say it like a robot? Shallow. Okay, if something is shallow, it means it is not deep. The water in the mud puddle is shallow. The opposite or antonym of shallow is deep. Listen to the following examples. If I describe something that is shallow, I want you to say, that is shallow. If I describe something that is deep, I want you to say, that is deep. A cup of water. That is shallow. Measuring all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. That is deep. A baby pool. That is shallow. A bathtub. That's shallow. Digging down to the inner core of the earth. That is deep. All right, did we distinguish between freshwater and saltwater? So did we talk about the differences? Yep. Did we identify characteristics of the saltwater habitat? Yep. Did we demonstrate an understanding of the word shallow? And then in just a moment, I'm going to let you go and you will write and draw about the characteristics of the saltwater habitat. Awesome job. See you next time.